Hello and welcome to Audionautic Deep Space Network, episode 91. This is the Independent Musician's Guide to Production and Promotion. And this week we're talking about the recently announced Teenage Engineering EP-133 KO2, a surprise update to the beloved, and I have it right here just for reference, PO33 sampler. There has been a lot of hype around its release, so we'll go over its specs, some issues that have been cropping up on Reddit and other places from users who have gotten it already, and finally, how it's shaping up in terms of the specs when compared to other samplers in a similar price range. We'll also be breaking down the officially announced royalty payout changes for Spotify and how it's somehow even worse than all of the rumors and confirmed leaks would lead us to believe. My name is Sunwarper, and with me today are Eon Lake and Curtis.
Hello. All right. Hold on, Eon Lake. We will get to Spotify. We have a whole
He's ready.
If anyone can see, anyone listening back on Apple Music where it's just audio, Eon Lake is raring to go with the whole Spotify.
He's actually, do you know that meme where that kid is in like a class or something and he's like really tensing his face and the vein is about to just like burst on his forehead? That's what Eon Lake looks like right now.
Exactly. Eon Lake, anything to say before we transition straight into what we're talking about today?
I think there's a lot of veins, but no, I'm going to rephrase that. But I think there's a lot of people with blood pressure issues since that announcement.
I get that.
Put it that way.
We will be going into it.
All in good time.
Also, before we go to the news chat, we'll get to everyone in our lovely chat. Welcome. But if you want to let us know what you've been up to this week, let us know in the chat and we'll get to it a little down the line. But Curtis, what are we talking about today? Let's get into it.
Well, we're going to start with the new release from Teenage Engineering. They've got a very well thought out name for the KO133 Mark II. And this came out, and there's been a whole roller coaster of emotion at this end of the world. Me and you discussing it on Monday, and it keeps going. Stevie's getting himself comfy. So yeah, you took the lead on this one. I've gone with Engineering of a Teenager because it's not quite so nice as it might have believed. I saw this and went, I must have it. Take my money, essentially. But you have found some other things, so let's go through it, shall we?
Well, I think it looks awesome, first of all, and I'm a big fan of the original. And we'll talk some differences. Well, first of all, there is quite the size difference, but let's share that screen and we'll talk a little bit about what we got. So as you can see, it's quite a bit bigger than the 33 that I'm holding here, the little PO33. This is actually the 133. It's kind of confusing because this is the 133, the Street Fighter variant of the 33, but this new one is the EP-133, but it's following up from the 33. So yeah, naming conventions, what are those? But anyways, 64 MB sampler. So you've got a little time. I think it's about 6 minutes in total. 9 projects, each with 80,000 notes. Each project contains 4 groups with 99 patterns. Patterns have 12 tracks for samples and MIDI, which is pretty cool. It's got MIDI I/O, 12 mono or 6 stereo voice polyphony. You can use groups to mix and match patterns. You can record and automate the fader. So there is a fader, as you're seeing. You can sequence with free time or quantized with swing. There's a loop mode with the OB4. There's 12 pressure and velocity sensitive pads, time correction and erase. You can slice samples or have it do it automatically. Stereo mono sampling at 16-bit. And this is going to be an interesting comparison to the original because the original, part of its awesomeness was its very bit crushy 8-bit sampling or around 8-bit sampling. It had a lot of noise and grit. This is much cleaner, which is good and not good, depending on how you like to sample and things like that. Punch-in 2.0 effects, so it's an advanced version of what we had in the original. 32-bit float signal chain, 24-bit ADC, DAC, sync I/O for external gear, and you've also got all the MIDI stuff. And yeah, that's basically the specs of it. What do you guys think of that? Eon, like you have a few samplers. What do you think about that?
Well, first of all, I think they've confounded expectation a little bit because I thought, well, it's just going to be another pocket operator thingy. Clearly, it isn't. Then I thought it's Teenage Engineering, so it's going to be one of their little hideously expensive tiny things.
Only 300.
It's not one of those either. And then I thought, well, it's going to be one of those quirky upscale things, but it's still pocket operator sort of spec, the sort of lo-fi vibe, and it's not really that either. And then this is where I started to get a little bit caught in the middle and thinking, well, what is it exactly? Where does it sit in the pantheon of samplers?
I love that. I love the.
There's like a Mount Olympus of samplers. They're all just there. SP-1200 is in the center,
Yeah. He's got Fred again at the top, just meditating. Yeah, it's gonna be great.
Because it was only the other week we were looking at the Korg one, right? And I just some of these products, it makes you wonder where they're trying to fit that, because it's obviously price wise, it's nowhere near the Korg, but it's not that. How much is an SP-404 these days?
$550, I believe. We'll talk a little bit about price comparisons. It's closest, in my opinion, to the Sonicware Liven Lo-Fi 12,
right?
Which is $240.
Yeah, I mean, it looks fun. It's got the slightly quirky like displays and controls and so on that you might expect. I don't know if it's got a cow on this one or not, but I doubt it. I don't know. I find myself thinking it's not for me. It's not aimed at me. Well, whatever it's aimed at, wherever they're pitching this, it's not me. I would spend more and get a better one, probably, because the 404 is still very small. Does a lot for the money. Really kind of hard to fault on that. If you weren't going to get one of those, there are already a couple of other things that you might consider instead. And this is something it's a bit cheaper, a bit more budget priced, and a bit more fun on the surface of it, really.
Yeah. Let's get Curtis's take, and then I have a couple questions for you, Eon, after about, because you have a OPZ, right?
No, he has an OPZ.
Z, yeah. The Z. I'm here in America, so I'll say Z. You can say Z. Don't worry. I want to talk, when I get to the comparison sections, I want to ask you a few questions, because that one I didn't get to put on the comparisons list. But Curtis, what's your take on this? Because you were super jazzed up about it when we were talking on Monday.
Yeah, for me, I think it fits the bill for what I would need and do. I was looking at the SP-404 last month, and I was umming and ahhing over it and stuff like that, and I haven't pulled the trigger on anything. But this came out, and I looked at it. I've looked at a couple of tutorials and a few walkthroughs, and it does what I would need it to. It's very immediate. It's got an onboard microphone. It looks incredibly portable. It looks weird and kooky, which I just love. Not
a shock there.
No, I would be down for it. I think the one thing that stopped me about the SP-404 is just the price. It's just it's out of my price range right now, and this is obviously a bit cheaper. It's a bit more budget friendly. Obviously, it comes with some limitations in that regard, but I don't mind those limitations. That does everything that I would need it to do. I'm not looking to reinvent the wheel of sampling. I'm just wanting something to switch up my workflow and give me a bit of portability. That fits the bill for me. I would be down. But
there are ways to work around those limitations. I mean, one might be storage, right?
So there's 64 MB, so it's about, from what I saw, about 6 minutes. But one thing I was going to mention in the comparisons later, but I'll mention it now. One of the tricks for samplers is to raise your sample an octave when you're sampling in. Yeah. And then you can sample much more because it's faster, and then you just pitch it down, and then you get some of that nice artifacting and things like that you want. Yeah. Now, one thing I was going to mention, though, is, and we'll get more to this in the comparisons shortly, but with Curtis talking about how it does everything he needs, I get that. I think it looks awesome. My thing is, I'm coming from a place where I have several samplers. Like, I'm fortunate to have a few, and it's like, I have the SP-404, which seems, I don't know if it's the most direct competition to it. I still think the Lo-Fi 12 from Sonicware might be, but it seems like everything I would need in terms of the complexities of sequencing and sampling and all that stuff I can do on the SP. And then it's like, where does the EP-133 fit in? Because it's not going to add the color the same way as the 33 would with that 8-bit sound. So why would I like have the? I kind of think when I already have some samplers, like whenever I'm adding a sampler, what's the point of adding that in? Color, compression, the workflow in terms of chopping or stuff like that. I think it's awesome. And when I first saw it, I was jazzed up about it. Like, oh, this looks sick. And I still think it does look sick. But for me personally, I'm trying to see. I mean, I'm not buying anything at the moment. I just got the Digitech. But it's like, if I were to hypothetically, like, what would its use be for me? So that's kind of where I'm at. And it's good to see that Curtis is still hyped about it. I'm curious if you were to take a look at the Liven Lofi 12 or even the PO33, what you would think in comparison to that, Curtis. But I was going to talk issues next, but maybe we should talk comparisons because we keep bringing it up. You want to do comparisons first?
Yeah.
All right, so we'll do comparisons first. So the most direct comparison I want to make is with the PO33, which again, I'll keep bringing it up. I just love this thing. I love the PO33. It's awesome. And that's one thing I think that is great about this. It would be a very similar workflow, but with some added touches like having a fader, which you can do certain things with and stuff like that. But the KO2, the EP-133, has much more polyphony. So you get, I think it's 12 mono voice or 6 stereo. You only get 4 voices on the original. It's larger sampling and projects. And then you get the fader and you get some more effects. And it's like a 2.0 update. But what I noticed, and I mentioned it, is that this is 16-bit only recording. So it's nice and clean, which is good. But if you like using a sampler to get some color or that like old school lo-fi sound, you're not really going to get it with that cleaner sound. So on the 33, it was around 8-bit. I think it's like some weird 8-point-something bit that I could find when I was researching it. So you get a lot of like artifacting and grit and things like that. And I would miss that, quite honestly. I don't know, Jan, like, do you have the 33?
No. But I mean, you can always resample, put a little bit of effects on there, something to bring the noise floor up, resample it 4 or 5 times.
Yeah, I mean, that's an option.
It's always available.
That's an option. Or if you have another piece of gear that can do it, I mean, it's there. Or you could always put sounds through a DAW, to get sacrilegious in terms of sampling workflow. But put some bit crusher, do something like that, and then send it in.
Sample what you like, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, or sample vinyl or something. But for me personally, I think that loses a little bit of character that I really loved about the 33. And I wish when we talk about the Lofi 12, the Liven Lofi 12 from Sonicware records at 16-bit, but you can also set it to the Lofi setting, which is 12-bit. Which you get that grittier sound. I wish this had something like that.
It does seem odd that it doesn't really, doesn't it, to be able to sample at a really bad rate. I mean,
it's not bad. Don't use that term.
8. I want 8-bit. No, only 2 bits.
There you go. Yeah.
But it kind of makes sense because it removes that barrier of storage and time and all the rest of it. If you want it to sound gritty anyway, then it seems a bit weird that you can't.
Well, be cool too, because that would give more sample time, right? Like if you do it at a lower bit rate, that's like the SP-202 and 303. They had multiple settings of sample rate so that you could get longer times. And the lower the sample rate, the like worse it sounded. But that actually became a trait of all of that. So yeah, Curtis, anything in terms of this comparison before we move to the Sonicware?
Just bear in mind it's early days. I think the timing of this release is just before Christmas, and I think it's just before Black Friday and Cyber Monday. And when the SP404, correct me if I'm wrong, I could be wrong on this, but it's when the SP404 was released, they had then a massive firmware update where you could do a lot more.
Yes,
and then you could do.
There's been 3. The one thing I would say though is some of this I'm not sure if you could bake that in via firmware. It might be more like a hardware. I don't know. Maybe. Depends if they can add update. Does it have firmware update? It should with MIDI in and out and all that. So I would think so. But yeah, that's an interesting point.
I just wonder if it's early days. It's like I was thinking about it on the bus home today. It's like when Skyrim was released, it was buggy as hell. When Fallout was released, it was buggy as hell. They're still some of the greatest video games in existence, and the same thing could be applied to something like this.
But this isn't a bug though. This is a character trait.
But you understand where I'm coming from.
No, I get it. But I mean,
if you can introduce it in software where you can halve the sample rate or quarter it, whatever, I mean, it may be something that they can just do with an update, in which case that makes things look quite different, doesn't it?
I think that'd be awesome. Yeah, no, I mean, I would change a bit of I still think it's an awesome sampler. I'm just saying I would like to see that for my workflow. I would like to see that. And in comparison to its predecessor, that's what I would like to see. But I still think it looks great. But let's talk about the Liven Lo-Fi 12 from Sonicware. So these are much more similar. The KO 12 voice mono, 6 voice stereo. Liven appears from what I saw as 10 voice max. KO is 16-bit. Liven is 16-bit, but has that 12-bit. Liven is $240 and the KO2 is $300. The workflows seem to be a little bit different. They look quite different. The Liven has more of like a piano roll, whereas this one is more like the old school sampler, SP type, things like that. I don't know much about the Liven, so I just did a quick cursory look to show some comparison. But to me, this seems to be kind of the direct competition there, especially in terms of price point. Eon Lake or Curtis, do you have anything you want to add in terms of this comparison?
No, only a potential other comparison.
Yeah, the next one, you're waiting for the next one. I know.
Yeah, we know
Curtis?
where this is going. We know where this is going. Go on, carry on, brother.
Okay. All right. So I put, because everything's boxing related in their marketing. So I've in my notes, I just put KO is outmatched by the amount of
That is
FX
solid.
sequencing and sample time available on the SP404. And there's a little asterisk here because I don't think that's necessarily a bad thing. I'm just saying in terms of quantity and times and stuff like that, there is a marked difference. There's also a price difference to consider. So the SP404 has 32 voice polyphony. KO is 12 mono max. SP404 can sample 16 minutes per pad. You get 6 minutes in total with the KO from what I was seeing. Both have MIDI IO, which is sick. I just want to add that's a good addition. Yeah, I mean, the workflows are different. The one thing, and Curtis and I were talking about this in our meeting, the pocket operator workflow, and by proxy or extension, this new workflow is a little more immediate. Everything's kind of just like what you see is what you get. I think there's a little bit more of menu diving on this new one. Not really, but a little bit. But everything's much more immediate when you're sequencing and doing all that. The SP, especially with everything they've added, there's a lot of button prompts and things like that. So there's some trade-offs and things like that. I don't think the 404 and this are a direct match. Like I've seen a lot of comparisons. Yeah. I've seen tons of comparisons. Oh, it's a 404 killer. It's all that. I think honestly that Korg Chaos Replay, which we talked about a week or two ago, is much closer to a direct competitor to the 404. There's a lot more similarities here, but I see people comparing these, so I wanted to show the differences because there are some pretty big differences. The sample time's the biggest thing, but I don't think that the limitations are a bad thing per se, because I think it's important to note that limitations are usually the birth of creativity. Old school samplers, like I think it was the MPC 2000 or something like that, had almost the same sample time as this, 6 minutes, something like that. And I might be wrong about which MPC or anything like that, but tons of amazing music was made on all of those old machines. So you can work around it. And if anything, those might make you get more creative in how you're doing things and work outside of it. And then, like we mentioned, there's tricks like pitching up what you're going to sample so that you can get more time. And then you pitch it down in the machine and you get some nice artifacting. Yeah. If the machine and the workflows sound great to you, like this machine specifically, I would say get it, especially if it's in your price range. $300 is a nice price range. But all I wanted to point out with these comparisons is to consider what else is around. And if you can afford something slightly higher or that does more of what you need, consider that. There's always combining samplers too. That's always a fun thing. Like I think one of the most awesome combinations is the 33 to sample in, get that color, put it in the 404, sequence it, do all that. And you can add effects, do live performance on it. So combo things are a good way to go too. But before we go to the issues, like I wanted to talk about the OPZ because I saw some people talking comparisons between these two. I'm not super familiar with the Z, so I was hoping you could shine some light on its specs and maybe in comparison to what we've talked about in terms of.
It's not really a sampler though. That's the thing. I mean, it plays samples, and you can load if you want to attach it to your computer and copy different files onto it and so on. You can change the sounds in it and so on, but it's not a sampler per se.
Okay.
It's more of a groove box thing that will play drums, bass parts, a couple of synth parts. You can chop up things on this like pretend reel-to-reel tape thing and chop it into slices and reorder the slices. You
So I
can
wonder if
little-
it would be a better combo with this, like having those two together.
Yeah. I mean, this is why I've got this out, is because I've got samplers. I've got 2 samplers on my play tray over there. I need something to go into it. And
There you go. Yeah.
I used to write little beats on this and then just sample them, and then think of other things to do on this. You know, it's just creating input for my samplers.
Yeah, I guess that's kind of how I'm using the circuit tracks now. Is I'll make something and then sample it in and just like almost vaporwave it. You know, slow down the pitch, chop it up, do all that.
This that does drums. I mean, I may want to put the occasional drum hit in to change things up, but the main beats are then in the samples. You know, the repetitive stuff's in the samples, and all the percussive varying stuff is still being sequenced, maybe. But yeah, but on that note, it also made me think, as a comparison, is this perhaps nearer the Electron model samples?
Yeah, that's true.
That's fair.
Which I think is probably a bit more of a groove box again, to be fair. I mean, I think that's how it's pitched, but from a sampling point of view, I think it's limited in scope and, you know, single hits and so on. But if you're thinking about augmenting what setup you've got, I would have thought that maybe those two could fill similar roles in a setup if you're looking to get some sample beats and so on.
That's actually a really good point, because I didn't think of this, but I think a really good place for this type of gear, this gear specifically, would be maybe someone that doesn't have a sampler but is looking to add a sampler into the workflow to just kind of work like Curtis, basically, you know, work outside of their normal, like what I was saying, what I'm doing with the circuit. I'll make something on the circuit, sequence it into a sampler, record it, chop it up, do all kinds of mangling and things like that. This would be a nice little $300, you know, put it at the end of your signal chain, and you can just kind of have fun. Or if you're working in a DAW, put it in. Yeah. And it looks like you still get analog to digital conversion, so you can get some nice little warmth and things like that, you know, doing it that way. Curtis, before we go to the issues, anything you want to add? Have these comparisons swayed your mind at all?
Not in the slightest. I think I think that's where me and you especially sit differently. You've got a bunch of samplers. I've moved it apparently. Forgot I did that. I've got the Volca sample, which is a nice thing. It's a limited, but it's a very nice sampler in its own right. Bit finicky, bit problematic in times, but it is cool. But I would like to have basically a beat machine, something that I would create with it from the start, and that is a great thing for me. It's really portable and it's thin, and yes, it's a bit more limited in terms of its effects, but I work through Ableton and I work in the DAW, and I don't plan to change that anytime soon. I work in Ableton, and I like that, and that hits.
I would love to see you get your hands on a 404 though, because I wouldn't be surprised if you changed a bit of your tune on those effects, man.
If you want to send me, if you want to send me some 500, if you want to send me €500, I'll be down.
I wish I could just be like, it's coming, but no, but but it's a tough call, because I'm like, I don't know what I would recommend to someone. If you have the budget, it's like, would I say just go for the 404? I mean, the 404 can do a lot more, but then those limitations, like when I work on the 33, the PO33, it's like sometimes I can make the craziest stuff because you've got to stick with 4 voices, and it's like, what are you going to do? Like record in more and then make it a single voice and things like that. So it's a tough call. I think it's just what workflow speaks to you is the way to go.
I think for me, I think just to add as a caveat to that, I think what looks as the immediacy of it, like you say, there's a lot of shift and button pushing. I was talking to Survey Channel about the Launchpad. Now it's about, and I got the Pro, and one of the reasons I got the Pro was because there's less shift pushing. It's all there. It's in front of you and it's there. And that, again, looking at this, looking at the Teenage Engineering, it's there. It's bang, record, done. Here, turn this, move this, done, beat, you got it, you know. And I'm fairly certain if I was to get an SP404, then I could learn that workflow, and it would come to me, right? As the same way it has come for you, and you now do some really excellent beat making on your stuff. But I don't know, maybe it's that instant gratification. It's just that notion it's there and I don't have to think about it too much. Because ultimately, the sampler for me is feeding into the existing rig, and the existing rig has a workflow that I'm down for. I don't need to go. It's to serve the bigger whole. You know what I mean?
Yeah, definitely. Definitely. I think it comes down to what type of effects you're using, what type of sampling you need to do, all that. But I don't think you can go wrong with either. I think like
Yeah.
it really depends what like this seems to be better for your workflow. One thing I would say is you could always try the original for $100 if you can get it. I don't know if you can still
Yeah.
get them new, but get it used. It might have gone up. I don't know due to this, might have gone down, but $100 for that. We're going to get to some comments though. I want to say hello to all of our patrons. They are in there. We'll get to the issues that have been cropping up because this is important. I do want to mention that, but we've got Abby in the chat.
Yeah.
We've got Shady
Hey.
Ridge. What's going on, everybody? We've got Bendu in the chat. Hello there. Nice little Star Wars reference. General Kenobi. You are a bold one. We've also got Lars. We were talking metrics in the green room, and Lars says metric makes more sense to me, but I'm in the US, so shrugs. Yeah. He also does add the only American who really knows the metric system are STEM people and users of illicit substances. Survey channel came in a little late, but that's all right. He says, can't believe I've missed so much. Hello, everyone. Welcome, Survey channel. Always happy to have all of you here. We've also got an interesting comment from Devoid of Funk saying, I got one to incorporate, this being the EP-133, to incorporate into my machine style workflow into my DAWless workflow. Interesting. Yeah, that's another little
kind of,
place to put it in.
Questions.
Yeah. We've also got Thomas with, of course, it doesn't show his
elbow
emoji,
cough.
but he's elbow coughing. Yeah, that's good. We've got
sign of the times. Yeah.
FCC said hello, everyone. Welcome, FCC. He says,
Cool.
Missed the KO chat. Looks amazing. Would love to get my hands on that one. Yeah. Yeah. I think a lot of us are in agreement with that. So, yeah.
I think it looks good.
Yeah.
One thing I was going to say about the 404 comparison is the things that are different about the 404, and it's kind of a little bit apples and oranges, are quite easy to detach. Like the fact that it acts a bit like a sound card and has effects, and Curtis nailed it. Is I've got a door. It's got loads of effects in it. I don't necessarily need that, but to have a nice, convenient little sampler that I can maybe take out and about with me and make beats, and that's how I start my music normally, and then come into the studio, plug it up, and get a load more stuff going, might be a lot more valuable. So yeah, and just sequencing and so on, you could work your way around that. You could use an external sequencer. It's got MIDI, So the things that make the difference between the two are actually quite sort of modular and detachable, and not necessarily an issue for a lot of people. So
yeah, just to add to that though, with the 404, you get it can be your audio interface. So if you were to take it elsewhere, like what I do as a separate piece of gear, you can put it right back in as an audio interface, or you can use it to treat any sounds in your DAW.
Yeah,
like you can do live performances on stuff. It is apples and oranges. I'm just mentioning like there's other uses for the 404 that this one just. I mean, you can kind of make it work in that way if you have a mixer and do things like that.
And they're the things that make it a little bit more than a sampler, but in the sense also that you can, logically sort of detach and go, well, all right, yeah, that's awesome, but I kind of don't have to have that if I just want a sampler and want to save, $200.
Well, let's go in. Let's hear as we're here. Let's go into the notion of the hardware issues before, because we've got to do a complete analysis of this to make this done. We've done the software and the capabilities and comparisons. We've done what it is. Sunwarper came very excitedly into the chat today, talking about the hardware issues.
I was not excited about the hardware issues. Check your phrasing. It's a bummer. It's a big bummer.
Sorry.
Yeah.
Okay.
It's a shame to see, and it's not. I as you'll see, there's a Reddit poll, if you could share it, Curtis, where there's someone put a vote, and now there's no verification of whether people voting actually own it and it came bugged or not or anything like that. But I've seen some bigger musicians and YouTubers posting that they got one and it doesn't seem to be working and things like that. But there's some issues. Let's see if this is that poll. This is someone having a direct issue. There's another link, though, that we'll need to share as well. But people are saying the speaker's not working or sounds aren't going. If you could just go to the other article as well, Curtis, because that one has the beat. Someone says Bo Beats, that's a large YouTuber, had some issues too with it. There it is. So this was a vote. So you can see 40-26 of the vote. So 40 people voted that it works as intended. 26 voted that it does not work as intended. A lot voted to see the results. If you go on this Reddit, it's the Teenage Engineering subreddit, you'll see different posts saying the faders having an issue, there's sound issues and things like that. Yeah. So it's a bummer to see. I don't know how widespread it is, but there are posts about it. So it's something to just keep in mind if you're looking to buy it. Just know, maybe check what the warranty is or something like that. But as Curtis said, we wanted to cover this as a whole, software, hardware, all that. And I was bummed to see that. But I mean, there's always going to be some issues with things and stuff like that. But I hope it's not as rampant as it appears to be from posts and things like that. And again, we don't know the verification of all of this, but I just wanted to bring this up. If you are hyped to get this, just keep that in mind. Yeah. I missed one comment by Bendu. This is a good one. A version of the tonic microtonic in this form factor would be interesting to me. Yeah, I would love to see, and maybe they will be updates to all of the pocket operators, either in this form factor or even just some new pocket operators. But yeah, that would be great. And then Devoid of Funk also says, do you think the TE unit has cannibalized that Chompy device crowdfunded deal? I don't know, because they seem to be very, very different in their workflows and just in their purpose. This seems to be much more like a sampler. That Chompy, at least the way they were showing it in the demos. And we talked about the Chompy whenever they announced the Kickstarter, I think a while ago. But we have a playlist here if you want to check our coverage of it. Anybody that hasn't seen the Chompy or anything like that. But the Chompy seems to be much more kind of about sound design and playful interactions with the sounds you're putting in and things like that. This seems to be much more like a sampler, in my opinion.
Interesting.
I saw you go like that, so I'm curious to see your take here.
Well, I mean, I read that and I thought, well, that's kind of maybe if they haven't cannibalized it, they've at least done something that's a similar price point and a similar functionality, and maybe trying to get this out to market before Chompy, because Chompy's still not available despite all those fake ads you see on Facebook. It's you can only get it from them, not any other website. So yeah, I was thinking, is this hopefully just software for if people are having, and I say if people are having problems with it, is it just something that an update could fix? Hopefully it's not actually physical defects or anything like that you've got to send back. And have they maybe got this out to market?
Some are like the fader not doing, yeah.
So well, I wonder what's going on behind the scenes of the marketing department. I wonder, again, thinking of the timing of this, the notion of it's over Black Friday, Cyber Monday, it's over just before Christmas. I wonder if maybe they were just a bit behind on their production. Maybe they just cut a few corners, and it's something that, and I mean, obviously that's not great, and that's not ideal, but it isn't something that is necessarily going to be an ongoing thing. Obviously, for those who are purchasing it now, or people who are purchasing it, that could be a problem for the small amount of people who have got it. But it's not like you've got it and then it's going to be like that forever. If you are looking to buy it maybe after Christmas or down the line, it's something that will be fixed down the line. I feel it's not the first synthesizer. It's not the first piece of gear that's come out with physical defects, and those have been quickly subsumed, so to speak. That's the right word.
Yeah, I mean, we just have to wait and see how widespread it is. I do want to mention though, because all this talk about portability and things like that, we would be remiss to not mention Koala Sampler and Flip Sampler. I didn't put that in there, but I think it is interesting to mention, because you talked about, I'd love to take this and go. And I mean, we talked about when we covered the latest Koala update a couple of episodes back, you can export as an Ableton file, you can export the stems, you can export all these different things. There's a lot of export options for Koala. You get a ton of sample time, all that stuff, but it's a touchscreen and it's on your phone or your iPad. It's an interesting look, though. I mean, Curtis, what do you think? Koala, Flip, all that stuff, and this. Do you think there's some competition there? I mean, $5 or $15 versus $300, or is it having the tactile hardware?
It's definitely having that tactile hardware. I think Devoid I think Devoid said it. Well, when Devoid brought up, it's not in my chat here, but the idea of it being a cannibalization of the Chompy, obviously it's a different idea, but it's within that price range. And again, we're looking at price range. If you look at
Chompy 500 on the Kickstarter, or am I making that up completely?
It's more than I thought it was. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, okay. So we look at if we look at the machine, if we look at like Lars mentioned the machine, and these are like 10K. Okay, so these, sorry.
I was like, whoa, unless you're getting a gold one, like those gold MPC.
Freedom currency, sorry, $500-ish. And the SP404 is around about the same. It's about $500, that kind of thing. This is more of, and then if you look at the other end of it, you look at the software samplers like Flip, and if you look at Koala, which do amazing things for a couple of bucks, and are awesome and great. However, they are software pieces and are somewhat limited in their own right, even though you can, I'm not saying you can't do anything with them, I'm not saying, but they are.
You can also sync MIDI and make it like hardware. Someone asked me on my YouTube, and I am making a video about it, but yeah, you can kind of make like a 404 out of little MIDI controllers and things like that.
So you can do this, so you've got samplers at the 500 end, you've got apps on your phone, and this sits in that middle. It sits in that 300, 250, 300 kind of realm, which the barrier between 300 and 500 is a lot for a lot of people. And especially
same as the $5 to 300 barrier.
Yeah, for sure. But like
after 3, you cross a boundary, don't you?
Yeah. And you make that investment, but also a Flip Sampler and Koala are great, but they're still apps and they're on a screen and they're still software and they're great and they're awesome, but you're still connected to a black mirror, which is problematic. And a lot of us try to get away from that. A lot of us spend hundreds of dollars on gear to avoid staring at that screen. Exactly. It's still a screen. So I'd always go for hardware in that instance, and I love Ableton, but I don't want to be in Ableton. If I could take Ableton and just have it as a figment of my brain and use hardware, it would be great, And but that's kind of
maybe as AI advances, you'll get your wish.
Getting there. I'm thinking about it. We're getting there. Mapping.
Couple bits of chat. Lars thinks that they rushed it out to market, so that's interesting. I mean, Curtis seems to be alluding to that. I'm not saying he's saying it, but saying, the timing of it and all that. Devoid of Funk says the Chompy still looks fun, though. I agree. The Chompy looks awesome. Eon Lake is in the chat, says definitely, although it is a bit pricey. So yeah, and that's Eon Lake saying
is
that.
It too much, because I do really like the look of it, but
yeah, I know what you mean. Devoid of Funk also says they're agreeing with Curtis. Koala versus KO, tactility always wins in my book. Yeah, I mean,
tactility, what a word.
I get that. I get that. It definitely. It's definitely a point in any physical samplers comparison with KO and things like that. But I love the portability of Koala, and even in the same the 33, the portability, just being able to move it around, but having the phone to just always just open it, sample from something, and make stuff. It'd be a cool combo. I'm thinking like if you have either the EP1, the 133, or a sampler, and like that's what I do. Koala, I always do sampler combos. It's the way to do it. But Koala into SP or Digitact SP, things like that. It's the way to do it. FCC says I'd love to have a play on a Chompy. Looks so much fun. Yeah, I remember when we were watching that video. It was awesome what they were doing on it. And David is in the chat. They say hello, everyone. Hey, everyone. Welcome, David. Happy to have you. What's going on? Yeah. Anything else we want to talk about this awesome sampler before we move on?
I think we move on because we could.
The next thing's a bit.
Right.
I know Eon like is just chomping at the bits to talk about Spotify, right? So.
Well, before we get to that, we'll just say a few of our patrons have just logged on. So hey, David, hey Paul FCC, lovely to have you here. Many of our patrons are in the chat week in, week out, and thank you ever so much for that. Thank you ever so much for the continued support that you give this show. This platform is growing. We have plans for next year, and we couldn't do those plans if it weren't for you. So thank you ever so much. We really appreciate everything you do with us and help the community grow. It's beautiful. We really appreciate you. If you are listening to this either on Apple Podcasts or the streaming service that shall not be named,
More on that soon.
Yeah. And you like what we do and you want to see us grow, consider becoming a patron. It's the tiers start as little as $2 a month. You get a free 7-day trial. You get access to behind the scenes content and extra groups. But really, when it comes to Audionautic Plus and moving up, we have a lot more content. We have a monthly hangout. We have a weekly kind of hangout as well, which is on our Discord. You have early access to all our content, and further up you go, releases as well. For example, if you were to do $7 a month, you would get all the Sunwarper and Curtis releases on Bandcamp as a download code. And we have got a lot coming out next year, so that's going to be fun. Plus sample packs as well, which is always fun. In short, essentially, if you like what we do and you want to support us, this is the best way to do it. Obviously, supporting by just hanging out with us and sharing content is great. This is also another way to do that.
Yeah, we have a lot of talk in the patron Discord about all the stuff we cover week in, week out, where we go in depth about everything, or we talk about different gear we're using. We've had discussions whether someone gets a new piece of gear and someone else has it. You know, we're helping each other out. Together we grow is the motto of Audionautics. So that's kind of the plan. And we have the public Discord, link is in the description, where we do all this, but the patron chat, we're always talking on there. It's a very great group, and we love hanging out with you all. But a couple bits in the chat before we move on to what FCC is labeling Spotify. Can it get any worse? Yes, it can. Yes, it can. But we'll get there. I skipped a little further down, but Devoid of Funk says Koala is one of the few apps that's worth 10 times more than they charge. Don't give them ideas, because you're right. You're totally right. but it's such a powerful. Yeah, it's such a powerful. I mean, they've been adding all these updates that cost a little bit more, but man, what you get for, I think, $15 for the total package, so to speak, you can do so much, especially with the mix bus now, and that that I forget what it's called, but the bit crush on there. I love that bit crush, the bit reduction. Oh, just awesome. Speaking of wanting like 12-bit and 8-bit and things like that, it's got it covered in software, so
too pristine.
Yeah, throw it in Koala
as well.
Sample the sampler with a sampler, you know. Lars says, we all love Spotify here. Yeah, I know you're their biggest fan, Lars. I know. You always speak how great it is. On that note, Lars says, Spotify says, hold my beer, because it is getting worse. It is getting worse. We've covered in several episodes, and to much of our chagrin, I suppose, that there were these rumors of what was going on with changes, and some of it leaked, and then some distributors confirmed some of the things, saying there were going to be a streaming threshold before you get paid, and some other things, changing the duration needed for noise tracks before payment and all this stuff. But it's still somehow even worse than all of that, and Curtis is going to go into that. Yeah, that was my I wrote for our tentative title, Spotify officially, because it's official that this is real. It's happening. They wrote it on their, I believe it's the Spotify for Artists. They said they're updating, what did they call it, Curtis? Updating their royalty payout, modernizing. Yeah, that's right. Modernizing modernizing our royalty system to drive an additional $1 billion towards emerging and professional artists. But this is they're dictating what emerging and professional means, and exactly. it's quite insulting. And
I think for these terms, emerging and professional means more likely to sue us.
Yes,
I think major labels, I suppose. Yeah.
We give them more money to try and keep them sweet. All those little fellas who don't really have any clout, well, they can pay for it.
Yeah. Well, they can not get paid. You mean they won't be getting?
They can pay the labels.
Yeah. Your money can go to the labels and everyone else. It's a very strange setup, but Curtis is going to go into it.
It's I just want to say, anyone here who's ever made a single cent, dollar, euro, crown, whatever, if you've made any money off your work, you are technically a professional artist. That is the definition of being professional. If you've ever had any financial payment for your work, then you are a professional artist. And now Spotify are moving the goalposts, redefining what it is to be professional, and it's sickening. It's got to be said.
Hold on, before we get into this, I want to mention this comment, because we're going to get into where we're at in terms of using Spotify and things like that. after all we talk about this, but Devoid of Funk says Spotify is the Windows of music streaming. I like that comparison. No one admits to liking it, but everyone uses it. It's interesting because I wonder how many people like we'll talk about, but Curtis, myself, and Eon like never really puts his music on Spotify, but we're considering different ways of having either some music on Spotify or not doing it, or what other options we can do, and we'll talk about that. But Curtis, go into what's actually happening in Spotify's own words.
Very much so. So I put this through, and it was a hard read. So buckle up, boys and girls. It's going to be a fun day.
All right.
Buckle up. We got a rough one.
It basically comes down to three main topics: artificial streaming, issue of lost payments. I'll say it again: issue of lost payments. We'll get back to that. Biggest case of corporate gaslighting I've ever seen, and finally exploiting functional, in inverted commas, genres such as noise. In this case, which we've touched on these before, but we're going to go.
Lars
through
isn't going to be happy about that one.
Not at all.
All of them fall under the category of hated things. Other people making money instead of us.
Exactly. So in the regards, I'm going to come down here to the issue of artificial streaming. Basically, Spotify is working hard to stop fake streaming that takes money away from honest artists. So they're going to take money from honest artists. Starting next year, they're going to make labels and distributors pay a fee for each track that's involved in this kind of cheating. This follows improvements in their technology to catch fake streaming and the creation of a group called the Music Fights Fraud Alliance. Currently seething quietly.
I had to silently share that one. Quietly share that one.
Music Fights Fraud Alliance. Where do I sign? I want to join.
Exactly.
Sounds great. So they're going to save all that money and give it to. Oh no, they're not going to give it to us, are they? They're going to give it to someone else.
Exactly.
Well, I want to mention too that there's rampant bot abuse that does not come from artists. Where there's this whole thing with like these random playlists that are, and I've had this issue where my song pops up for a day on some playlist and gets a ton of plays. I've never heard of the playlist, never submitted. I look and it's all from one location in Finland, and I email Spotify and they're like, "Oh no, that's nothing." But that is a bot playlist, and I don't want to be on a bot playlist. It screws up your algorithm, does all that. It's horrible for you, and yet it's not me doing it. But now you might get punished for it, despite I report it to Spotify, I report it to the distributor. Spotify just says, "Don't worry about it, it's okay." But then they're also saying we're going to punish for things.
Okay.
So it's so
whose
strange.
problem is that?
It's Spotify's.
Not anymore. No.
They're just like, okay, it's your problem.
Who's going to pay to fix that problem?
We are.
The distributors. They're going to charge the distributors, and then you have to pay a fee.
Well, that's just it. That's what they're essentially doing. Is they're essentially shifting blame onto distributor. They're basically saying it's not our problem. It's DistroKid's problem, or it's TuneCore's problem, and things like that. And that is the thing. These playlists and these bot lists are being created on the platform of Spotify. Instead of Spotify dealing with the issue and making it their problem, they're just pushing it out, saying, "No, don't want to deal with it. It's going to be your problem. No worries. It's now you." They're coming, and the worst thing is they're coming from a position of, we care so much that we're going to stop it at the source.
They're telling you it's a good thing as well.
I know.
It's like stopping these bots would be a great thing, and yet they're not stopping it. They're just kind of like, well, we'll just charge someone else to deal with it, so we're still generating streams and all this
Once
stuff.
again, Spotify pissing up your leg and telling you it's raining.
Oh, I don't. Has a lot more to come. Don't you worry.
This is only part one, may I add. This is only part one. I just want to come down to what this is here. We believe that it will meaningfully deter labels and distributors from continuing to distribute the music of known bad actors that attempt to divert money from honest, hardworking artists. These charges will support our continued efforts to keep the industry and platform free of artificial activity.
They're going to do what they're accusing these bad actors of doing. Exactly. Diverting money from honest, hardworking artists. We should be doing that. It's our platform. How dare they take the money that we were going to rob you of?
Lars, I'd love to hear why you think this. He says this change is 100% going to result in more botting. Let us know if you're game. in the chat why you think that's the case. Oh, I didn't even see this one. I accidentally hit the
Yes.
thing, but FCC
Yes,
said
yeah.
it's called the positive sandwich. Sandwich the stuff up in between something positive and no one will notice. Well, that's why we're here.
That's how you
We're
fire
reading
people,
through it.
isn't it?
Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah, it's not a good. This seems like they have the right start. Like, oh, we need to deal with artificial streaming, and then their idea is, well, we don't need to deal with it. Let's make distributors deal with it. Yeah, don't worry. Yeah, it's okay. We'll make So okay, great. Why is that going to help? You know,
it's awful. So that's the main thing, right? So that's as in not the main thing. That's the first thing. They say they're trying to combat artificial streaming.
Hold on one second, because Thomas says, according to the article you mentioned in the last episode, they only penalize if 90% or more of the spins are botted. That's great. I mean, yeah, it doesn't make sense. Like, that's great sarcastically, because what if like you're a smaller artist and you get a couple streams a month or something, and then you get placed on one of those bot things and you get 700 in a day that you had no control over, and then you get that song removed and you have to pay even though you had nothing to do with it. It's Thomas says, which makes even less sense. A lot of these things you'll see when you start reading the nitty gritty, or what they say is the detailed explanations, it makes less and less and less sense, especially when we get to this whole unique listeners section about the payment threshold. That got me very upset, and all of this starts making less and less sense the more you look into it.
Is anyone else getting Twitter /X/blue tick vibes off this? We're just going to make daft changes to tackle bots that nobody wants.
But all of this isn't even. That's only one section of this, the bot thing. It's like the rest to me is even worse. I mean, this can screw you if, like I said, like with Thomas's example about if you're a smaller artist and get a smaller amount, and then you get placed on one of these for no reason, like you're just going to get removed and punished. That's really bad. Don't get me wrong, but these royalty payments things are even worse in my opinion. Lars has a little bit more about what he was saying, that it's going to be 100% more botting. Artists are now worried about hitting the threshold, so there's going to be a lot of small artists gaming the system to be noticed and get paid. I think that is why they're trying to put in this whole unique listeners section. We'll get there in a sec, but basically it's like not only do you have to meet 1,000 stream threshold, you also have to meet a certain number of unique listeners in unique locations before that 1,000 counts. It's weird, and you'll see how vague it is. They won't even say the number, and I kind of get why they won't do that, but we'll get there in a second.
I fail to see how this is going to stop bots anyway. I mean, it might stop the type of bots where you deliberately set up a server and you run a bot farm on a server. But if you're a cyber criminal and you control a botnet, thousands of computers around the globe, this is not going to discourage you.
That's what Lars is saying here with the unique listeners is a huge part of why there's going to be more bots. Yeah. I would just argue, like those issues I've had with these botted playlists, all the streams come from one location. So I'm not saying that every bot farm is like that. And I've never used a bot farm. This is these weird where a song gets added, you have no idea why. And if you do ever have that, you can always message me. I'll let you know more about what I did to deal with it. But I contact Spotify for artists with like images of the playlist, all that, and say, look, I didn't do this. I'm letting you know what's going on. And I also let the distributor know too. But yeah, it's very strange. Every time I message them though, they say, oh, don't worry about it. You know, I just think CYA always have the proof, always have the note. If they do later say, hey, you did use bot, be like, look, I notified, you know, it's always good to have. Anyways, let's continue, Curtis.
Yes, let's continue. So the second part
here we go.
Second part of this is, if I get rid of this, that's the one. The second issue, payments lost in the system. Let me preface this by saying it's a system that is created by them, or has been created as a result.
Very good point.
Let's just put that out there before we've done anything else. Spotify came about, and then distribution, like Spotify and TuneCore, these were bred as a result, and they all have a hand in that as well. This is very much a system which has been created because of the modern music industry, and now they're claiming to get past it. But I digress. Today, Spotify hosts well over 1 million tracks, blah, 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 blah. Those tracks on general, or the average is about 0.03 cents per month. Because labels and distributors require a minimum amount to withdraw, usually $2 to $50 per withdrawal, And the bank fees charge a fee, usually $1 to $20 per withdrawal. This money doesn't often reach the uploaders, and these small payments are often forgotten about. But in aggregate, these small disregarded payments have added up to 40 million per year, which could instead increase the payments to artists who are most dependent on the streaming revenue, i.e. us.
Yeah, I have a deep issue and a flaw in their logic here, if we want to call it logic. That's a serious problem with this argument that, oh, if you're not generating 1,000 or something, because 1,000 streams is like $3 to $5, whatever. Let's say it's $3, right? If you get 1,000 streams. So in the current system of royalty payouts, if you have one song that each month is getting, let's say, 1,000 streams, you've got $3 every month. If we're using this, I forget what the actual amount is. Maybe it's 6, maybe it's 10. We can use $3, we can use $10, whatever. We'll use 3 though for this. So you have one song that's getting 1,000 streams a month, giving you $3 each month. Okay. You also get 10 more songs that each get 100 streams each month. So that's another 1,000 streams in total, but not 1,000 streams per song. So that's another $3. So that's, let's say, $6 every month. Within just a couple months, you will meet most of these distributors' payment threshold, and you would get that money. But with this new one, first of all, you would not see that first 1,000 unless it was in the first month that came out of that the main song that gets 1,000 streams. And all those songs that only get 100 would not. None of those royalties would count. So you lose 1,000 streams in this 10 song, 100 streams each example. So it's going to take much longer to reach that payout before you see even a cent. Whereas in the current method, you would get $3 to $6, whatever the amount is every month, and meet their distributor threshold. Secondly, the distributing threshold, that's on the distributor's end, which they're acting kind of as your bank holding your money. This has nothing to do with Spotify. So why are they being the arbiters of saying, oh, yes, well, we're helping you and the distributors because, it's the distributors making the decision. And like, what? Why do you have any say in this? You don't have say in this. Your job is to pay for every stream that is earned on your site. That's the point. And yet now they're just being like, well, no, your work in sharing our site, your work in sharing your songs to us, paying a distributor to be on here, and driving customers to our site, even if it's 5, 10, 50, 100, that doesn't matter, but keep doing it because we'll give that money to someone else.
Yeah. And that's the thing as well. It's you're saying, oh, you're not getting this money anyway, so we're just going to redistribute it to someone else.
Yeah.
Don't worry about it.
Most of it. So, we'll just give it to someone else. Okay. That's fine. Yeah.
It's bollocks. It's like these other companies are taking your money, so we're just going to take it instead. Happy days. And that is just insane. It's just insane.
Thanks, FCC.
Yes. Which is, something I keep having to come back to all the time. And to be honest, that gets to the heart of everything I feel about this, because I don't really give a damn, if I'm honest. I get very little from Spotify, I always have, and it's not part of it's just a promotional tool as far as I'm concerned. So what I do object to is just this gaslighting bullshit of like trying to say it's a good thing and they're trying to fight bots and all the rest of it. It's just, it stinks, right? It's wrong. Everybody knows it's wrong.
Yeah.
You're not going to convince me otherwise. Don't try and tell me it's a good thing. Do what the hell you like. Don't tell me it's a good thing.
Yeah, I would see. Okay, I still would have issue with this, and I understand, I guess, from their greedy standpoint or whatever. But had this threshold been 1,000 streams per month in total before you start getting paid, it would make more sense to me. But by divvying it up between song, you're only songs that reach that threshold are able to be paid for. And there's some really weird things too. I don't want to steal from you reading it, Curtis, but we'll get back into it. But the song has to reach 1,000 in its first month to receive full payment for all 1,000 streams. Whereas they even write, I think, if you received 700 in the first month and in the second month you received 300 streams, totaling 1,000 within that first year's bracket, you're only getting paid for the 300 and any stream after that. Those 700 are going to someone else in the emerging and professional artists term, as they put it. Yeah. So was this, because I have songs that I have multiple songs, and this isn't, I'm not trying to brag or anything. it's just an interesting thing. I have multiple songs that generate a couple thousand streams a month, but other ones get 10, 100, 500. So whereas now I currently generate maybe $40 to $50 a month, I'll only probably get 6, 8 a month because of those ones that aren't getting it. But as I was saying earlier, with the way it is now, those little streams that they're calling, negligible 0.3, they all add up and equal it. It's very Lars says the same thing you said, Eon Lake. Eon Lake was like, they're gonna give your money to Taylor Swift, Sunwarper, and I was like, yeah. And there goes Lars. They're gonna give Taylor Swift all of your money.
Yeah.
She needs it though. She's having a rough time with it.
They don't want that business, right? They don't want those small streams. They want people to get like several million streams a month on most of their songs. Their worst song gets like 5,000 streams a month, right? Anyone smaller than that, they don't care. They're taking up room on servers. Go away, and we're giving your money to someone else.
And I mean, it's a private company. It's their platform. If that's what they want to do, sure. If you want to be like that, go ahead. We'll talk about where we're going to get into it. But
before we continue, I've got there's a lot of chat. We appreciate all of you sharing your opinions. Continue, please. But I have to share this latest one first. Survey Channel says, have I told you lately that I hate Spotify? Survey Channel, I don't think you've mentioned it in the last like 5 or 10 minutes. So I appreciate you reminding me because it's good to be reminded. Lars says, I think you mentioned it before. Yeah, maybe. Let me go. Sorry, I hit the wrong button there. Let me go.
Changing my mind either.
I gotta find the top here. Lars says the unique listeners is a huge part of why I might have read this, of why there's going to be more bots. Each bot will count as a unique listener. Yeah, the issue, like I was saying, can't remember if I read this before. Sorry if I did. It has to be in different locations, unique locations. Lars says it's ridiculously easy to create a bot. There's all kinds of black hat software. Yeah. FCC says that's really not hard to get around for people making bot lists. Thomas says they should just have made the royalty scheme user centric.
Like
there's Lars goes on about bots. Really don't need to read that. Thomas says Spotify will see a huge increase in free accounts, and then he's laughing at it. Yeah, probably. Devoid of Funk says if Spotify are using the same algorithm for their new Wrapped feature, the numbers will be as skewed as the retrospection in Wrapped. Interesting. FCC says I have a funny story about Spotify Wrapped. I'll pop it in the Discord. We're looking forward to reading it. And we got a little more while I was reading those. More just popped in. We love you all. I love all the talk. Yeah. Devoid of Funk says Spotify is as bad as banks. They take our stuff and use it to make money for themselves. Interesting. Yeah. I mean, they're claiming that this whole money they're going to be taking from artists is going to go to other artists. It's like some weird reverse Robin Hood thing. Bigger artists will now get the smaller artists' money.
At least banks don't tell you they're going to fight cold and flu by punching you in the face every 5 seconds.
Or just coughing with the flu in your face or something. David says, not good. And Bendu is with Survey Channel mentioning that they do not like Spotify.
Which is probably what they want, surely. I mean, it's got to be right.
But it's interesting to me because here's something I'm thinking. Just, I guess we're jumping the gun a little bit, and I didn't write this in the notes, Curtis, but they are creating animosity and anger towards them, Spotify, for actual emerging artists who are small now, but will become popular. When they become popular, why would they, if they don't like Spotify and aren't making money at the moment, why would they later be like, oh yeah, Spotify who took all that money from me, I'll start using them more and push them now? That it's a strange thing. I mean, yeah, sure, maybe they would because the royalty payout's better or something, but it's interesting to me that they're kind of like making these actions towards actual emerging artists and still expecting all of these artists to say, hey, just because it's us, keep sharing, keep using it, and once you get that metric, you'll start getting the money will flow.
It's like working on an internship.
When the story's out there, when people do make it big, and then this Spotify somehow will pull all their music.
That's what I'm saying. It's like, why are they going to screw themselves up with the future generation?
Of porn for musicians there, because
it's
a lot of people are going to enjoy that.
It's short-term. It's short-sightedness. I think maybe I'm wrong. Chat, let me know. But I feel like this is a very short-sighted. Like, we're bleeding money. Let's just. There's this billion here. We'll say
Yeah.
we're going to give it
We'll
to
find it.
the
Yeah.
bigger streamings, and maybe it'll get some of these smaller ones off the platform if, you know, Eon Lake's right in terms of storage and all that stuff. But it's like, well, those smaller artists are going to become big, or some will. So why are you creating animosity between you and them so that when they do get big, they might drive people to Apple Music or to Tidal or to Bandcamp or Artcore or something, you know, like what?
Well, without jumping the gun, maybe they just don't have that amount of time. If they are bleeding
That's
and
true.
never turning
Yeah.
a profit. I mean,
Yeah.
we'll get into this in more detail, but maybe they just
Lars says
don't.
the angel investors are calling in the tab.
Yeah. Well, this is it. Like, they just don't have that amount of time. Like, some of the people, some of the kids that I'm working with who are releasing their first beats are going to make it big in the next, you know, 5 to 10 years. Maybe Spotify doesn't have that long. Before we get into the speculation, let's go through the last piece
go
of
on,
gaming
sorry.
the system.
Yeah.
Let's try and keep on track. This is, for me, when we went through this a couple of weeks ago, I think this is probably the biggest one for me in terms of gaming, because they're calling it gaming the system with noise. They framed it in a way that just removes any form of artistic integrity. And I think Survey Channel pulled it out when this first hit. This is commodification of art. And it really speaks to me. So in the streaming era, functional genres are popular: white noise, whale sound, static, etc. And so a typical song for these are a few minutes long. Some bad actors are shortening the whale tracks to 30 seconds and stacking them consecutively in a playlist without listeners noticing, so that they can earn outsized payments. The idea then is basically there's a skew with the notion of noise tracks, and that these are not artistically there. They're just cut up and put up there. So starting next year, they're going to increase the minimum track length in order to be eligible to generate royalties. Functional genres will include white noise, nature sounds, machine noises, sound effects, non-spoken ASMR, and silence recordings. They'll also work with licenses to value noise streams at a fraction of the value of music streams. That is draconian, if I may say so. That is fucking draconian. This notion of there is now a separation between what is noise and what is music. You're going to generate less money. There's going to be a minimum track. Is deemed as a second-class form of auditory experience. And that, at the fundamental level, that is just, well, that's bullshit. That's what that is. Put it frankly.
Yep. I mean, I think you said it succinctly.
Yeah, I just try not to throw up. What really gets me, the thing that gets me most of all, is this is all on Spotify for Artists webpage. Like any of this. But I mean, yeah, it's the final insult as far as I'm concerned.
Let's actually break down the royalty split before we go in, because we got to talk to unique listeners and the threshold amounts and stuff like that in their words before we go into the future things, because I know we're at 12:18, so we got to go through it. But I think we need to define exactly what they're doing for the royalty split. So if you could just go down to, I believe it's in this article where they list the actual percentage splits. Like of that, it needs to be 1,000 streams. I'll remove it while you search for it, but I know it's in there. That's why I put it there. But
I think it's this
yeah,
one.
it should be that the article I linked in the that Spotify for Artists, in their own words. Then the modernizing our royalty.
That's the one.
Yeah,
that
I can't see what you're using. It's let me find where they actually put it. Where is it here? Okay, it's how we're addressing it. Track modernization eligibility. It's a couple paragraphs down from the top.
Track modern eligibility. Yeah. There we go.
Now I'm not seeing that there. No, that's in Czech or something, I think.
Give it a sec.
I can't read that one.
Here we go. It's up here now. It's in English.
Okay.
So this page.
Well, there we go. Okay. Actually, I'm on a different page, but I'll read what I'm seeing. So how we're addressing it: track modernization eligibility. Starting in early 2024, tracks must have reached at least 1,000 streams in the previous 12 months in order to generate recorded royalties. Spotify will not make additional money under this model. There is no change to the size of the music royalty pool being paid out to rights holders from Spotify. We will simply use the tens of millions of dollars annually to increase the payments to all eligible tracks rather than spreading it out into 0.03% $0.03 payments. Okay, now I think you've got, here we go. Okay, recordings with the annual streams between 1 and 1,000 generate an average of that, just 0.5%. Subsequently, this money will be reallocated. That's just showing the where does it show the actual amount that they're gonna give, like the thresholds? That's not the segment. It should be. There's a whole section where they break down like the actual money, where they say, well, basically, I'll find it later if you can't find it. But while you're searching for it, what I'm trying to find is where they state you have to reach 1,000, and if you do 700 in 1 month and 300 in the next, you're only going to get the 300 and streams after that. It's in there somewhere. It's where is it? If you go up a bit, Curtis, keep going up on the scroll. It should be right near the top. What's at the top of their thing? Is it that one? There we go. Well, that's all right. We'll have to find it later. I'll find it and put it in the Discord because I don't want to be dead on the thing. But basically, what they're saying is you got to have that. You got to meet that threshold, and it's just songs. Like it's per song. It's not in general. So yeah, if you have multiple songs that all get 500 streams in 1 month, none of those count until they get to 1,000 each, and then you're only going to get paid for the after 1,000 and whatever month it hit the 1,000. So their whole thing is if it's in the first month, then you'll get the full thing. If not, then you won't. And then there's the whole section about unique listeners. I had it, but I don't know where it's gone in the article. So what I had read, and if it's changed, maybe they've deleted it, but their whole thing they were saying was that it's unique listeners, and they're having a threshold now of unique listeners, and that amount they're not disclosing, but it has to be in unique environments. So basically what it's saying is if you have, let's say, 5 people who all love a playlist and listen to these smaller artists, and that racks up to 1,000 streams in a month, they might say, hey, 5 doesn't meet our threshold of unique listeners, so we're not going to pay out. Yeah. Yeah, like, how do you feel about that?
They're not going to pay out those huge wadges of cash that they were previously paying out, right?
Yeah.
Wow. Boo-hoo.
Yeah, and again, I'm not seeing it in the article now. It was there when we were looking at it. If Curtis does happen to find it, we'll cover it, but I will show it in the Discord. I don't want to... I just want to clarify that we're not seeing it now, so if they did change it or it was deleted or something like that, there you go. But that's what we were seeing when we were originally reading it, and I'll find it if I can, if it's not deleted. But Curtis, share your takes on this while I'm going to check something.
Lost audio.
Are you muted?
Yeah, I muted myself. There you go. I went for a sip of tea and did unmute. Learning and going the other way, it seems. The notion of the speculation, I think, is the idea. We've gone through these over the couple of weeks. These revelations are nothing new. Essentially, they have just confirmed what we have been speculating now for a few weeks now. Feels like years. But the notion of this is obviously a dark day or a dark period for Spotify. I would like us to look at kind of where things could go and where things are going from there. I come back to my original point. I feel I don't want to be alarmist or anything like that, but if a business is pulling a stunt like this, it tells me that the business ultimately is not in a good shape. Spotify have never turned a profit. They continue to seek money and seek funding, and Daniel Ek, for some reason, continues to not be able to send a profit, which is one of the fundamentals of running a business. If you think about it in the grand scheme of things, maybe the process itself of streaming is just unsustainable. It just eats itself. It's just eating, because today it's 1,000 streams. Right. Next year it's 2,000 streams. The year after it's 10,000 streams. You know, it just the ladder keeps getting pulled up and up and up and up as it sinks. You know, and I can't see this is for me at least. It's a decent indication that they're in trouble, and that that has wider ramifications for streaming in general. Before, I think, just to add before it came on air, Eon, like you said, that Apple Music have just put their fees up. Spotify put their fees up 18 months ago. I don't think it's just me. No, it's email. It's they've just targeted you, but it's like the process itself. It's just I mean, it's never been sustainable. The idea of getting $0.0037 per stream, it's so you can't make any money anyway as an artist. Like that from the grassroots level proves that it's unsustainable.
Well,
And
Apple at least could subsidize it with all their other businesses, but for people that are just streaming, like Spotify and others.
Okay, guys, I just want to quickly share this because I did find the sections in that article I linked. I want to read this because it is there. Let me find I'm going to present my screen.
Fact me up.
Let me find what is this one called? Track monetization. Give me 1 second. It should be this one. Okay, so let's share. Curtis, can you share the screen that I just put? Because I'm on that part. All right, are you all seeing the screen?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so how will royalties be calculated under this new policy? Recording royalties are typically calculated at the end of each month based on stream share. For example, if a track received 1% of all streams on Spotify, it would receive 1% of that month's royalty pool. Currently, all music streams on Spotify are included into this stream share calculation. How nice. Under this new policy, each month, Spotify will calculate stream share just for, and they italicize, eligible tracks, those that have received at least 1,000 streams globally in the previous 12 months. In practice, that means a track generates royalties for all streams in the first month it reaches eligibility, not for streams from any month prior. If a track is streamed over 1,000 times in its first calendar month on platform, all streams will be included in the stream share calculation that month. If, for example, a track is streamed 750 times in its first calendar month on platform and 500 times in its second month, that track would generate royalties for all 500 streams. I love the all that they put there. All 500 streams in that second month, as well as for streams in subsequent months, as long as it remains eligible.
It's like a relegation system in the
but wait, there's more. Yes. Can a track go in and out of eligibility? Yes. Each month, all tracks that have been streamed at least 1,000 times globally in the previous 12 months will be included in stream share calculations for royalties. A track can go from eligible to ineligible to eligible again as popularity changes over time. And here's the next thing. This is what I was talking about, unique listeners. Can a user just stream their own songs 1,000 times to become eligible? No. As part of the policy, there will be a minimum number of unique listeners required for a track to become eligible. This ensures that a handful of users can't stream the track hundreds of times each to become eligible. We won't share publicly what that minimum is to prevent bad actors from gaming the system. Of course, our industry-leading artificial streaming detection systems will continue to remove artificial streams as identified. So there you go. That's what I was talking about.
Well,
I forgot to mention that, yeah, you can fall out of eligibility. So let's say you get let's say you get on a Spotify playlist, right, for a couple months. Once it's past a year, if the song still isn't generating over 1,000 streams, you're out until you can start generating again.
Just again, monetization and competition aspect of what we do. And it's very disheartening. It's very disheartening. Question is, I suppose, what are we going to do about it? As independent artists in their own right, what do we do? And I'm coming from a consumer's point, so we consume, and we put stuff out there, gentlemen, and people in the chat. What are you going to do about it? What's the reaction? Are we just going to carry on as we were, or are things changing? Stevie's standing up, so I think he's got something to say as well.
Yeah, I mean, I'm curious if this is going to be the end of monthly releases.
Okay, tell us more about that.
Well, they're pushing to reach a certain stream count on a song, like per song. So if you're releasing every month, you're going to lose those streams on other songs. If you're trying to push a new song, I mean, unless you can get on playlists that are going to generate 1,000 streams in the first month or over time, it seems like you'd be better focused on a single release until you hit that metric. I'm saying if you're pushing to get monetized, first of all, that's if you're willing to play this new game that they're pushing, and that's a whole other part of what we're talking about today with, like, where do we go from here? But I'm just saying, I think we'll see some ramifications. Playlists with this whole unique listener thing, that could be an issue for independent playlists now, because, like, why would people listen to these when you need the bigger listener pool? Why would you submit to smaller playlists? Because what's the point or something? it's a very interesting. It's kind of like what we were talking about when Bandcamp was bought by Songtrader. Like, what's going to happen? Is there going to be sync licensing, this and that? This is a lot worse. This is like not good in any way, shape, or form. But I'm curious what these long-term ramifications are going to be to all of this. So, yeah, I'm sorry to derail the question you're asking. I'm just saying that's some of the things I'm seeing with, like, first of all, what's going to happen in the Spotify landscape for independent artists, and then secondly, I guess we need to consider what's our next move in this evolving landscape.
I think it's very fair. Like, originally, me and you were talking about this. My releases next year, I was thinking about doing monthly releases, and now I'm just not going to do that. I've packaged everything up slightly differently. It's going to be a different way of releasing it. It tells the same story, but just in a different fashion. And I genuinely don't know at this stage, as a producer, whether I'm going to put it out on Spotify. I don't know at this stage. The jury. I know as a consumer, I'm done. As a consumer, I'm shopping around. I'm looking for different ideas. I've been experimenting with Tidal. I'm experimenting with Apple Music, as if they're any better. But it's better than, at least they're still paying. But as a producer, I don't know if I'm comfortable putting on my stuff. Right? Hear me out. So obviously, there's that notion of, I don't want to support a system which is effectively just cutting us off by the balls, essentially. I don't want to feed into that, right? So even if I'm supporting Spotify by putting my stuff out into the world, the other side of me is, well, the people that experience my music and people who enjoy my music, who do listen to my music on Spotify, it's not their fault. It's not their fault.
Yeah.
And I don't want to take the joy, or whatever adjective you want to use, that people listening to my music, I don't want to take that away from them. But that's me. Hi. And I don't want to take that away from them. I don't think that's fair for me to punish the people who appreciate me and support me. But then I also don't want to feed into that system. As you can tell from my discourse,
no, it's tough.
So torn.
It's tough because it's insulting to us to, like, hey, put your music on here, promote it, and we're not going to pay you for it unless you hit this. Like, it makes no sense to me that this would be, first of all, an idea. Secondly, that they're trying to bill it as a great thing. Like, yeah, streaming revenue should be higher, but by just taking what's hard earned for a lot of people and giving it to other people to make it seem like it's a bigger number, that's not actually, that's inflating the numbers falsely. You're giving someone else's earnings to other people. That's just, it does not sit right with me at all. And so it's hard to justify being like, okay, yeah, I'll put stuff on it.
A middle ground could be
the other weird thing, like I said, is that you get some songs that do really well and then others that don't. So it's like, you're gonna do well for some of these, and you can, like, but how do you know the song's gonna do well until you put it out? And it's like, it's this very strange thing. Just really quick, Curtis, I'll read everybody. I know you're posting lots of chat. We'll get to them in a moment. I just want to say, because it just keeps going. Keep going though, please. Keep going. By all means. We'll get to them in a moment. Go ahead, Curtis.
I mean, you got to find that middle ground. Okay, so for example, the synthwave track that you put out last month, it's a decent song. It's synthwave. It's very synthwave. We know it's gonna hit the playlist. You know it's gonna work.
But it's like, I hate living in that idea of like, I guess this song will do well, or am I making this song because I know it'll do, like, it's like, my kind of thinking is just, I'm thinking like the songs that I feel like either people who listen to me on Spotify, because there's certain like audience demographics in terms of like genre that I make, if that makes sense, because I make a lot of different genres. So I know I get a lot in terms of like ambient guitar music and synthwave. So I'm kind of thinking like the songs that fit that mold, put those up. But then I'm focusing on YouTube right now, because my YouTube is earning me money and things like that. Maybe not a ton right now, but it's like, that's probably the best platform for me at the moment. And I have the most fun doing it. And I think that's very important, like fun, because that's what this comes down to. And then I think like Bandcamp, my website, and Apple Music. Like for my latest release, I shared Apple Music. I wasn't going to share Spotify.
And I think that's fair. I think again, it comes down, it always comes back down to the same question: the artistic movement versus the commodity, and whether or not the track you're making, are you making it for monetary gain because you know it's going to hit? Because there's nothing wrong with that. There's nothing wrong with it. There's nothing wrong making a track that you know is going to do well because you want to make some cash. Nothing wrong with that, right? The question is the extent to which you want to buy into that. And it becomes an interesting question into, again, the separation of art and the commodity, the extent to which you're willing to put stuff out there. And the idea of whether the track that you're making, why have you made it? And it exists. The universe spoke to you, and you've vomited out this track, and it's there, and it's mastered, and it's ready to go. Is it one that is going to quote unquote hit the zeitgeist or whatever's playing right now, or is it not? And if it is, maybe put a single out on Spotify and keep that going. Otherwise, just keep it to Bandcamp. You know, like if I've got these EPs that I'm releasing next year, maybe I'll choose one from each and I'll put them on Spotify. Perhaps, maybe I haven't decided. That's not a thing yet. But like instead of putting the whole thing out there, it's like a try before you buy situation. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Yeah. And then you have the whole worry too. If these weird bot things keep going on, it's like the songs that you do put up might not even be eligible if they make this whole thing up that, oh, it's artificial because a playlist you had no control in putting your song over had it for a day and generated streams. Or it's just as I was saying earlier, like the more you read into all the details or supposed details that they're putting, which to me just read like AI generated text, you know, like it makes less and less sense. Ian, like I don't know if you have anything you want to add, but there's a lot of chat, so I want to get through that because we're already at an hour.
Let's
30.
do it.
All right, so we've got first. Friends, let us know if I missed anybody. Actually, I think there were some I missed. Hold on, let me go. I keep trying to go to the top. Shady Ridge says loathe it. Yeah, that's a good way to put it. FCC says Spotify only has eyes for one thing. Interesting. Thomas says Spotify is in the pockets of the big players. Small artists and labels are just an annoyance to them. Yeah, I mean that's Eon Lake has been alluding. Eon Lake has been mentioning that storage is becoming an issue because I think they say like 100 million songs on their app or on their database. Like it can become an issue. So maybe this is all a ploy to get us riled up to get us off of it so that they can free up space for the next Taylor Swift album or something. I don't know. I mean, not that we keep mentioning Taylor Swift, but anybody. But it's on my mind because Eon Lake and Lars were mentioning it. Speaking of Lars, says I'm going to make a 30-minute album of nothing but 30-second songs. Lars, I was going to mention something, but Thomas has your back. He says make it 31 seconds just to be safe. Actually, I think you need to make it a minute 30 to hit that metric now. So just look at their metrics, whatever it is. FCC says Brian Eno is going to be livid. Lars says that he doesn't believe that they won't make extra money. Yeah, I don't know. Devoid of Funk says it's almost like the distribution of music is doomed to sink to its lowest rung, regardless of technological innovation that tries to elevate it because humans. Yeah, I mean,
beautiful.
It's like a race to the bottom, doesn't it?
Yeah, I mean, the idea of streaming is great, like access to all this music and democratization of you can listen to whatever you want. But then it also devalues art, right? Because now you're no longer paying. You're no longer being like, oh, this is special because I had to earn money to buy this CD for $20 or $10 or whatever, and like I need to listen to it, like there was that whole when I was a kid, like buying a CD because I didn't have money, it was like, oh, I need to get this one, or debating between two CDs and not sure which one, and then you got to listen to it, right? Lars says eventually it's basically just terrestrial radio. Yeah, we just go back, we just keep going back, we move forwards and then backwards,
just mainstream stuff. Yeah.
Abby says, I wonder if Spotify's tight relationship with the labels might open them up to an antitrust investigation if they proceed with that. Lars says,
very good point.
Already laws against payola that would have to be enforced, which is rare. I think Lars was also mentioning, and they talk about it, there are two types of royalty payments. I forget the names, but one goes to like the pros. And I don't think Lars, correct me, I forget what exactly you were saying, but I think you were saying that they can't do this with that one payment because there's a copyright law or something like that. I'm probably butchering it. It's been another night of no sleep with the newborn, but Lars, just hit me up in the comments to correct what I'm saying, because I think you remember. You probably do what we were talking about.
Publishing
Devoid of Funk says
the recording, isn't there?
Distributing your distribution. Yeah, there's something. It's like the copyright would still be owed for the thing there because there's those two licenses, and this is only royalties. This is only the one type of royalty that goes through the distributor, not the one through the pro. Devoid of Funk says, oh, wait, first, sorry, Devoid of Funk, there's this one. FCC says, I wish Spotify would fall out of eligibility. Well, push for Apple Music or something. Though that's like the same thing, but make just Bandcamp more and more, I guess. I don't know. But then we've got issues with Bandcamp. So it's a dark time for independent music, man.
It's really difficult.
Jeez. Devoid of Funk says, my goal was never to make money on Spotify. It just felt I owed it to myself to take advantage of the gatekeepers and make my music available to the worldwide. I mean, yeah, that's a good point. That's a good point. That's a good point. Thomas, when we were talking about how the playlists and all that, you know, the change in playlists and change in releases, monthly releases, he added, and everyone will probably release on the first Friday of the month. That's a very good point. It's like with Bandcamp Fridays, everybody rushes to get it out that day and it becomes just drowned out with email after email. Yeah. And Thomas, we were just talking about this from, I think, one of Thomas's earlier comments, but he says basically they just want to get rid of all the small players. I could imagine they would make user-generated playlists even less visible just to be able to divert more listeners to editorials. Yeah, that's what I was saying, Thomas, as well, that I think playlists as we know it aren't going to be very relevant anymore because you have why be on a, I mean, that's just, I'm not trying to sound mean, but I could see people thinking, why be on a smaller playlist if it's not going to help me get to this bigger number? Like, you know, if I'm not going to get streams from it or only get a few, why spend the time trying to submit and do that? And if they have this unique listener cutoff threshold, like if smaller playlists don't meet that, I don't know. I could see things changing. Abby also says, and use all of those artists for free advertising as they promote their work.
Yeah,
I think
exactly.
that's from another section we were talking about, but I know, sorry, it took a while to read all these comments, so different things, but yeah, exactly. Is that if you're pushing Spotify to get that 1,000 streams, you're advertising their platform, getting people on their platform who are either giving them money or giving them ad revenue. And then you're not seeing anything for that effort that you're putting in. It's a very strange thing. Lars says, at least Apple Music isn't trying to screw us for now. Yeah, we'll see. I don't know.
Coming up next.
Lars also says $100 marquee campaign. Yeah, that's their new, you can pay to be put on the front of Spotify or have a full, when you open the app, like a full thing comes up like listen to Sunwarper. And yeah. Devoid of Funk says, I also release tracks to justify my gear acquisition. What is it? Syndrome, right? Gas?
Syndrome,
yeah. That's a good way to put it. I love this next comment. Are you ready for it? FCC says, I could make more money playing Oasis covers on a mouth organ, sat in a sleeping bag under a bridge with a cardboard sign and a cup. I mean, coming out in March 2024 on Audionautic Records. FCC mouth organing.
Now they're going to take the cup away.
A live album, yeah.
Devoid says, comment of the stream. Yeah, I mean, we can push back the ambient release, FCC, and we can go with the mouth organ. You know.
Yeah.
I think it'd be a winner. Yeah,
just saying. What else do we have? Survey Channel says, "Don't let your art be a commodity." I wholeheartedly agree. True. I mean, I think it's hard to justify putting music on Spotify at this point. That's where I'm falling.
It's always a choice.
I don't know what the answer is, but I think everybody has to be asking themselves, "What's in it for me?"
I think one thing
what works for me.
Yeah, I think one thing that we should do though is, if you are planning to cancel your Spotify account or anything, or even just if you're an artist on Spotify and you're not happy with this, write them. May not seem like much, but the more artists that do that, the more they know. And especially speak with the wallet. If you are a Spotify user like Curtis, he canceled it and he's on Tidal now. I would hope you wrote a letter, or you're moving to Tidal or something like that.
I've moved the professional account to Tidal until the end of the year. I'm moving. I have the family account for all the family, so I've got to slowly just go get them all across, just one by one, just hold their hand, send them to Tidal, and just kind of. It's okay, don't worry. It's different.
When you do cancel, write a letter about, or when they say, why are you canceling? Be like, because you're taking money.
Bastard.
Yeah. I was trying to be nice. I was trying to put it nicely, but yeah, I think
they haven't put it nicely at all.
That's true. They haven't, but maybe I'm just trying to be better. I don't know. Yeah. But that's okay. You don't have to be. You don't have. I'm not judging. Be as rude as you want. I don't care.
Exactly.
But all I'm saying is just speak with your wallet, speak out, raise awareness. I did want to add too, because someone I think mentioned I was seeing on Twitter, like, Spotify Wrapped came out, right? So artists are sharing their stream counts and all the information and stuff that came out, and that's great. I'm not saying to not do that, but if you are gonna do that, make sure you mention what's gonna happen with Spotify. Like I saw I had a certain amount. I think it was like 55 people that I was in their top 10 or something. Like, that's great. That's meaningful. Like, that means a lot to me that people are listening to me in that way, right? Even if it's Spotify. So I'm grateful for that. And I was like, should I share that? I don't know. If I do, though, I want to be like, thanks a lot. But remember, like, Spotify is doing these changes, like, things like that. I don't know. I'm just saying, if you are going to share it, put a caveat, maybe like, hey, they're doing some stuff.
Yeah, I think that's fair. It's an open-ended discussion. As you can see, we're pretty torn, and ideas not there. If you've got if you are in the chat, or if you're listening back, or if you're listening on Spotify or Apple Music at this point, and you want to weigh in what you're doing, be you a producer or a consumer, this is a murky subject. There's no right or wrong. Obviously, nothing's right or wrong. It just is. But we want to continue the discussion on our Discord.
Them changing this is wrong.
Yeah. All right, I'll give you that one. But what we choose to do in reaction, there's no right or wrong. Yeah. I think as you have to do what's best for you. And I'd love to implore people to come and have this discussion in a round robin venture in our Discord, because it is murky. There are lots of different angles, and it's good to get different takes and different ideas from each other. So if you want to head over to our Discord, we'll continue the discussion. Yes,
I'm gonna do the Eon. Like, I do want to add too. Does anybody disagree with this and think this is a good thing? I would like to hear. Honestly, I would like to hear. I've seen things offering counter opinions. But they didn't seem to be the most trustworthy of sources. So
EMI were unavailable for comment, unfortunately.
I'm just saying, I would like to see if anybody thinks this is a good idea or a great move or something. Let me know. Let us know. Put it in the comments. Put it on, if you're listening on Spotify, in the question. Let us know in there. I do want to say, though, we appreciate everybody who does listen to the podcast, either here or on Apple Podcasts or Spotify. If you want to help us reach more new ears and all that and continue to grow, leave a rating, leave a like on this video if you got value out of it. Curtis has something to say, and then I'll read some of the chats that we got because they're interesting.
Yeah, just to say that this doesn't seem to be affecting podcasts, so we'll probably continue to put.
Podcasts don't earn money until they get 100 streams per episode, so they already do some threshold on it. On Spotify, it's different.
On Spotify, This is just about music. We put this podcast out on Spotify, but this is just about music and music where this is going. Yeah, sorry, I just wanted to make that clear.
Yeah, no, definitely. So Thomas says, to reach the 1,000 spins in the first month, an artist would need to be placed in the top of a pretty active playlist with at least a few thousand followers. Not many are able to do that. So yeah, that's what I was getting at as well. That it's like why be on these smaller playlists? Like, possibly, what's the thought? Like, I could see it changing this dynamic landscape. Also, like, I think it's more of a reason, if you are putting music on Spotify, to not rely wholeheartedly on playlists, but try to build following, which I think is something on Spotify that's very hard to do. Like, it's easy to get on lots of playlists and get these inactive streams, but you want active users who are listening to you for you. And I don't know. I mean, that's really hard to get enough to justify 1,000 streams on a song. It's just, this is such a strange metric to me. Like, I would understand 1,000 streams per artist each month to make this metric much more than 1,000 streams per song. But I guess they needed to make a much higher gate to enable, whatever. But just very strange. Lars got me covered about, it's the mechanical royalties determined by the CRB. And he put, commencing January 1st, 2018 and continuing through December 31st, 2027, licensees must pay royalty fees for all eligible transmissions of sound recordings at the rate of 7.5% of gross revenues. Thomas, also adds, if you're on a major label, you will probably be happy with the changes. I don't know, though, because, I mean, you can fall out of eligibility. So it's only per song, like, it's determined by song. This is what makes it so crazy. So you could be a big artist that has a big discography, but if only certain songs are generating over 1,000 streams or something because they're on the playlist or that's what people are listening to, those older songs won't be generating. So yeah, you might get more money, but you're also not getting as much as if if you had a couple big songs getting lots of plays and small ones getting smaller amounts of plays, you'd be making more in the end with the old way. I don't know. It depends on how much the new royalty amount is going to be. It's just crazy. And Lars has a good point. If your label hasn't already screwed you out of your royalties, the 360 where they take percentages out of everything and this and that, it's crazy time. So let us know. We'll continue this talk in the Discord. The link is in the description if you want to head to the public channels and patrons. I'm sure we'll be talking about this because it seems like we've all got some opinions, but I'm curious to hear, what are you thinking about doing? Like, where do you want to go in terms of releasing on Spotify, not releasing on Spotify? Or if you have lots of songs that get on playlists, are you kind of thinking making songs only for that, or tailoring so that some songs go to Spotify that you think will be on these playlists, and then the artistic ones you have more flexibility on or do for fun, releasing on Bandcamp, things like that? I don't know. It's curious to hear everyone's take, because as you can see, we're all a little bit conflicted about it, though none of us are happy about it. But yeah, let us know in the Discord. Let us know in the comments if you're watching this back later. Curtis, anything you want to add?
I think from my end, there's nothing more I want to add. I want to hear if Eon Lake has anything to say.
Oh,
am I sick of talking about Spotify? No.
I'm sure more will unfold.
Yeah, I mean, I'll be interested to see how this affects other services.
I agree. It's gonna.
I hope they don't follow suit.
I agree. I think it would be stupid if they did, and it'd be interesting to see if actually them go the other way. We know that Deezer, for example, remember that exists, but they have just gone
Amazon Music, right?
Yep. These have just moved to, I think Thomas mentioned it, a user-centric royalty-based system. I think these have just switched to that, which is fine. But I mean, no one uses Deezer, so it'd be good to see one of the bigger players kind of get involved in that kind of thing. It is the time. The silver lining I see from it is it does bring the idea of fairness, so to speak, into the game. You know, this is whether you are a consumer or producer, it does throw into question the notion of, and we've been banging on about it for years because we have a vested interest, but the notion of the input and output and the commodification of art and where the modern music industry is going, it does throw it into question. These conversations are not a bad thing. These conversations are very good for human development. So it is sad, and it is obviously from our perspective a negative thing, but it does also open up of other avenues of exploration, which I think we have to hang on to. You know, when the universe closes one door, it opens a window. I think we have to remind ourselves of that.
Yeah, that's true. And I have a feeling that the landscape of Spotify as we know it is going to change. Like how we use Spotify as independent artists, I'm talking, not as consumers, but I think Spotify's playlists might see a big change. I think a lot is going to see issues, and it's an interesting time. It just seems like they're furthering this whole idea of devaluation of art in the pursuit of commodification, right? You know, like they're just going for it and trying to make, like, kind of what Thomas is saying. It seems like they want this, actually. Like Thomas is saying, I would suggest people start to overflow Spotify with tailor-made crappy tracks just to make a point. And Eon, like, as Curtis interrupted me saying, says, or tailor for a certain artist made. Just joking, he says. And Lars says, dad joke, A+ for you, Eon. Like, but what I'm getting at, though, is it seems like the notion Thomas is suggesting, like this joke, this idea of putting these very crappy pop tracks, all that's kind of what they want, because they want these easily digestible tracks that go on the playlist and generate a lot of streams, because it's going to generate more revenue, right? And generate more ads and listeners and
tracks. What about just filling up their service with rubbish that no one wants to hear?
Just noise. Over a minute 30 noise. That's probably a better method.
Just sit there with your guitar, play a load of chords, try and make sure that none of them are in the same key or anything. and just, 3 minutes of that, go, I've just wrote a song. It's brilliant.
I'm just saying, I think that this is actually the point they're going for, is that they want these songs. They want songs that are all similar so that they can all be listened and the most listenable and the most digestible and this and that, because that's what they want. They want that. So it seems like it's further devaluing of art, pushing commodification. Lars says
people don't like music.
Yeah, Lars says Tidal could make a whole advertisement campaign over this development. I mean, these other streaming, it's like Nintendo and Sega. I was a little young at the time, but I always see like Sega does what Nintendo don't or whatever. Like they need to do stuff like that. Come on, get in on it. You know, Abby says, for me, the question is if Spotify is a valid discovery platform. What percentage of listeners use the platform to discover new songs and new artists? But that's what I'm wondering. Is it going to change this whole aspect? Because like, are new artists not going to put music up there because they're not getting paid for it? It's a very weird time. So it's all thoughts. It's all, just we have to wait and see. It's like with all these other things that have been happening. But yeah, it's sad to see so many different things going on at once on all these different aspects of being a musician. Like we have Bandcamp. Nothing seemed to have happened yet. Hopefully nothing does, but there was a lot of worry there. And then Spotify now and all that. It's like everything just seems so shaky right now. It's crazy. We've pissed off Survey Channel, though. He says, I can't stand hearing about Taylor Swift anymore. And we've got a lot of jokers in the chat with just shake it off, Survey Channel, or she's definitely developed quite a reputation. So, yeah.
We've now descended into dad jokes.
So I think we should call this. Let's quickly go what we're up to this week. So we'll start with Eon. Like, what are you up to this week, my friend?
I'm putting together an album of Taylor Swift.
Oh no, Survey Channel just left, man. Come on. You're putting a playlist of sounds like Taylor Swift, right?
Yeah. No, I'm trying to put some finishing touches to an EP.
There you go.
I'm working on.
Inspired by Taylor.
For a label you may have heard of. But yeah, overdubs. A little bit of this, a little bit of stylophone over there, but generally just dirty noises.
Little stylophone. I love it. That's
I
awesome.
just love overloading the delay circuit on it. It's got one of those ones that it regenerates more than it should, and it just howls like a banshee if you do that. It's great.
Nice.
Curtis, what about you?
I'm actually taking a bit of time out of the studio. I've got 4 concerts in the space of a week. So I'm going to be out of the studio. I'm going to be glued to a Behringer X32, and I'm going to be doing some live engineering, live mixing in the concert space, and that's going to be good. I've been hitting a bit of a creative rut. I've been hitting the same workflow over and over and over again. So I'm going to step out, and I'm going to sound check some bands, and I'm going to make them sound good, and I'm going to record everything. It's going to be awesome. That's my week ahead of me. It's going to be intense, but I'm really looking forward to getting into some proper engineering and doing it properly. I can't wait. It's going to be fun. What about you, bro?
Man, well, first of all, that sounds stressful but good. But I've also not been able to get like any. This is the first time I've been in the studio in a week or over the weekend. First, we had like all the Thanksgiving stuff and all that. It's getting to me. I'm like, I just want to make music, but I've had no time. I haven't been able to film anything. I haven't been able to edit anything. Like, just too much, man, too much. But that's just the way it is. So you got to deal with it. But one thing I'm trying to do is like find the micro moments. Like if I can just work in Koala for a minute, like that's making music. Or like when I had Luca, my son, on like the carrier that it like holds him so he can sleep on me and stuff. I was just making music with the mouse and keyboard, like making ambient tunes with Analog Lab Play, the Arturia thing. I was just testing that out. So it's like finding those little micro moments to just like get as much as I can in when I can, because there's not much time. But yeah, when I can't work on music, and I say work, but I mean even just like when I can't play guitar, like it's just like a part of me is missing.
I know what you mean.
What's that, Eon Lake?
Time hacking.
I'm trying, man. That's what Koala's for. That's what Koala's for. Yeah. What were you saying, Curtis? You were deep in a thought, I think.
No, I just in responding to time hacking, I think Eon Lake probably put it better than I could. It's finding those pockets of times, and as we keep shuffling along this mortal coil, the time and the pockets kind of get smaller and smaller and smaller.
That's
and
why you need a pocket operator.
Pocket operator. You need these kind of things. You need to find these little moments, and it's no longer about it's no longer about the 5, 6, 7, 8 hour sessions. It's now about these little, like, you know, half an hour, 45-minute sessions where you can just get in, and time shifts, and it's about moving with that. And yeah, I'm glad you're finding that.
Yeah, I mean, it's like you have to, like Survey Channel says. Oh, I put the wrong one. Welcome to parenthood. Yeah, I know. I knew what I was getting into. It's just sometimes it all feels like a lot, and you just have to kind of reassess. The other thing, my dog has to get like tooth surgery, so I'm like been anxious about that. They have to go under and all that. It's like, so yeah, it's just a lot at once. So you just have to deal with it. But let us know what you're up to over in the Discord. I'll just share a few last bits of chat because we got good ones. Thomas says, kids are exactly why dads start to get into ambient music. Yeah, because you can mouse and keyboard and just add Supermassive and call it a day. Right?
You might get the kids to sleep as well.
That's what I was trying to do. He was just screaming, and I was like, okay, secret weapon time.
There you go.
Analog lab play and Supermassive, and then he just went to sleep. It's like mission accomplished. Looks like we're convincing FCC to do that Oasis mouth organ cover band.
Okay, we're gonna have to have another chat then, aren't we?
Tuning the harmonica this week and finding a warm sleeping bag. There you go. That'd be a good. We could make a video. Like all. Perfect. Yeah. Just speaking of though, we're filling up quick, but we are taking submissions for our label for Audionautic Records. We've got almost the whole year filled up, but there's a few slots still open. So if you are looking to get your music out on our label and all that, and all the things that we do with that, including visualizers, promotion, mastering, all that, email us audionauticsounds@gmail.com and we'll give it a listen and we'll let you know and all that. But there's a cat. Steve agrees. So if you want to hang out with Steve in a meeting or something, just hit it up. But I think with that, we'll call it a day. This was a long one, but we appreciate everybody who hung out with us, all of the awesome chat. You all are great. We really appreciate you being. I just saw Lars's comment that he doesn't like the term mouth organ. I get that. That's what was it? Craig Ferguson, the Late Late Show. He always the harmonica. Yeah, but we're talking harmonica. Don't worry. Yeah. But we appreciate everybody hanging out in the chat, hanging with us this whole time. There was a lot to talk about. It was great hearing your opinions. If you want to talk more or talk about other things, head to the Discord. We will be in there. It's saying there's a new comment, but I'm not seeing it. Oh, it's FCC laughing and Devoid of Funk. Appreciate you, Devoid of Funk. So if you're not there already, head to the Discord. The link is in the description. If you're not seeing it, just put it in the comments or something, and we'll hit you up with it. Because I know Discord keeps changing the duration of how long a link works for, so it might not work or something, but it should. But we appreciate you all hanging out, and I think with that we will call it a day. So we'll be back next week at 11 a.m. Pacific, 7 p.m. UTC. I believe Curtis is going to be out next week.
Yeah.
So we'll have some fun talking gear, and Eon like still uses Ableton, so we might still have to mention Ableton, but but it's okay. It's okay. Ableton's cool. But
it is. It's dope.
But yeah, I think we'll call it there. See you all in the Discord. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you next week.